working folk don't have a chance unless we organise. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Tell me, which side are you on?
Sally McManus, to many of us, probably needs no introduction. She is the fantastic Secretary of the Australian Services Union. She is the straight talking and tough driving force behind one of our biggest union wins in decades, the landmark Equal Pay campaign that achieved enormous pay rises for over 150,000 low-paid community workers. Sal is a social media guru and an inspiration to many. She's behind Destroy the Joints efforts alongside her own huge working schedule and recently the Tracking Abbott's Wreckage blog. So securing justice for the worker is at Sal's very core, and I personally believe nothing will stop her in the pursuit of a better deal for workers. Sally McManus.
I want to pay my respect to the traditional owners of the land and to elders past and present. I think it might be good to start with a little bit of a recap about insecure work, just so that we're all on the same page about what it is. It's casual work, which we've talked a bit about, and I think everyone's got a pretty good idea about what that is, but it's not just that. It's also temporary work, so people might be on fixed-term contracts for short periods of time, which I think also happens for TAFE teachers sometimes and university teachers. Even at that level, they're finishing them up at Christmas time, and then you don't know until next year whether you're going to work again. It's contractors, so that's where you're asked to go and get your own ABN number, make yourself your own little business, and all the responsibilities on you. It's also some forms of part-time work, as we've heard, not all, but some forms of that. And it's also labour hire as well, where the confusion over who your employer is and who can get rid of you and when is a day-to-day thing for all labour hire workers. So there's a whole different definitions for what insecure work is, but the thing that binds them all together is the fact that you as a worker no longer know whether or not you're going to have a job the next day or the next week or the next month. So that's the commonality between it. And you think, well, okay, it's 25%, I think you said, Trish. I think it's between 25 and 30. How did this happen? And sometimes it's talked about that, in this situation where there's this many people in insecure work, almost like the weather. Like we just woke up one day it was sunny, and the next day it's not. It's rainy, it's overcast. Like, how did that come about? That we went from a working society that wasn't dominated that way to a working society that is dominated that way. Well, it wasn't just because the clouds blew over or some random thing that happened. It wasn't because workers all of a sudden started saying, oh, listen, we'd actually like to be more insecure. We don't mind if we can't get loans for houses anymore, or we can't, feel secure in our jobs. It wasn't the workers that pushed for it. It wasn't even really governments that went on some advertising spree. And have you seen the TV ads saying, take up insecure work? Push everyone to be insecure, it's a great idea. It wasn't that either. It was because it was a concerted effort by corporations around the world to make work insecure. Because it's not just an Australian issue, it's a worldwide issue, which I'll talk a bit about. And they have done this because it is a way of moving the risk of parts of business off themselves onto the individual worker. So all of a sudden we, as the workers, are the people that bear that risk, not the employer anymore. Because we've always had insecure work of some form. We've always had casual work to some degree. It's been around, and it's been like places like here and elsewhere. But that's very different to the situation we find ourselves in now, where so much of the workforce is like that. And if you're entering the labour market these days, it's very, very hard to get a permanent full-time job. Anyone knows who's lost their job and they're older, how hard it is to then again get a permanent job again. So it's been a deliberate strategy, and they use the term deregulation. Now, deregulating the labour market. What does that mean? It means taking rights off us. That's what it means. Deregulate, getting rid of rights. And so that is something that, of course, has happened with government support, but it's been a program that business has pursued all over the world, and we are victims of it here, just like people are elsewhere. So I want to tell you a little bit of a story about how this is happening in a local sense. Qantas workers are members of my union, and so these 5,000 job losses are mainly actually in Sydney with our union members at the airport. And at the international airport, the bosses there have said, well, what we actually want to do is change our full-time, part-time mix. And when we're in negotiations and we say, well, what does that mean? They said, well, actually, we've worked it out. We think the optimum situation at the moment, 60% of people are full-time and 40% are part-time, is 90% part-time and 10% full-time. And so, well, why is that? Oh, well, planes come in the morning, planes come in the afternoon, we just want like blocks of work there. But this is how it works, is what they do is you become a part-time worker and you've got a guaranteed minimum hours of, say, 20. Now, if, let's just say, planes don't run on time, because usually like that happens all the time, the employer can just say to the part-time worker, we want you to stay extra hours, and you flex up. So you might have to work 10 extra hours that week when Qantas is busy, and down when they're not busy. So at the moment with full-time workers, okay, there's troughs and there's busy times, and that's part of what you share between the company and as the workforce. You know, it's really the employer's part of sharing that risk. Now, all the risk is going to be back onto the worker. And so, imagine if you're one of those part-time workers, it's impossible really to get another part-time job, because if you're going to need 2 jobs, if you're going to have to survive yourself, you can't, because part of your job with Qantas will be you're expected to be able to stay back and do those overtime hours at single rates, of course. Because that's part of working for Qantas now. So that's just like a small example of where risk has been moved from the company onto the individual worker. And when I said this is a worldwide phenomenon, I had a really good discussion with Sharon Burrow, who's actually, I think we can say now in these new conservative times, the queen of the World Trade Union movement. President of the secretary, I should say, of the ITUC, so that's the Global Trade Union movement. She's the queen. And she's actually just from over the mountains, just down in Bathurst, not bad for a girl from Bathurst, about this issue. And she said that she's been flying around the world, as she does, and been talking to governments, mainly the social democratic governments, about their responses to the global economic crisis, because it's very bad outside of Australia. And she said, it's like, I have these really good discussions with these governments, and then, you know, it changes. They change what they're going to do, and they're all implementing the same program of deregulating the labour market. And eventually I got to the bottom of it through some friendly governments that started telling me what was going on. Following me was the American Chamber of Commerce with their program of saying, what we want you to implement. We're going to come and move our offices here or work here. It's really not flexible enough. We've got it flexible elsewhere. You've got too many regulations. This is our wish list of what we want. And so this has been pursued not just here but around the world. If you look at young people in Japan, it used to be the place where everyone had a salary. Well, everyone, men had a salary and had a full-time job. Now it is so hard as a young person for that to happen. And so what kids do is, well I say kids, actually not, people who are 30 who haven't got jobs will, you know, sleep on friends' couches and wait to get their jobs by text message. And so text message in the morning, yes, turn up to work. Text message, now, no, don't turn up to work. In places like Spain and Portugal and Greece, where the economic crisis is the worst, we have situations where it's nearly up to 50% of the population have insecure work. And there the preferred method is as contractors. So you can have any job, like any job, say working here, you will have to pay your own tax. You'll have to work out all that yourself, and you're your own employer, which means they can get rid of you whenever they want, and they treat you just like a contractor. And so that is the case for most people actually in Southern Europe. The US has been like this forever. And this is of course the heart of it all, like where they can get rid of people at will. There's virtually, unless you're in the public sector, no unfair dismissal laws, no rights to minimum hours. It's the worst in terms of those particular rights. And for so long we know, because of the working poor in the US, that insecure work is just a way of life over there. I wanted to touch on the issue of something that really annoys me, because sometimes I hear commentators talk about this situation as if it's something that's a really good thing for people, and actually not just a good thing, a reflection of who we are. And what we've got to understand now is that young people just aren't like the other generations. They want to have lots of different jobs. They want to move around. They're always looking at the horizon about when they can move from another job. And with a bit of contempt too, they throw in, they say they've actually got no loyalty. Unlike us in our generation, they've got no loyalty, they'll move from here, they'll move from there. Well, this is this sort of like blaming the victim mentality, which of course the Abbott government's very good at, which we know, but it's making what is a structural or a systemic problem, blaming individuals who are not at all responsible for it. I mean, basically, young people are products of the system that they've found themselves in, this system that's been created by the rich and the powerful. And so, yes, they are more resilient, and maybe they don't have loyalty to their employer, and who can blame them? Why should they? Their employer's got no loyalty to them. They'll just get rid of them at any point. So they've found ways to cope with that and to exist in that type of world. And so, we see the same sometimes. I saw Eric Betts, I can't stand it, talking about how he was going to change the laws for, there's this thing called individual flexibility agreements, and that, you'll be able to negotiate these now. There's changing the way that they work to take away the safety net. He said, you'll be able to negotiate to leave early if you want to pick up the kids, and that's for women, because only women that pick up the kids, obviously, and that this is really good. This is going to give you lots of flexibility. So you'll be able to trade off your penalty rates in order to leave work early to pick up your kids after school, and isn't this a great thing? So there's the word, flexibility, like it's really flexploitation, isn't it? That is what they've been about. And when we talk about insecure work, we have to remember it is not a young person's issue, it's everyone's issue. It is affecting everyone. And I see so many of my members who get made redundant that find it so difficult to find those jobs again. So it's not good enough really for us though to talk a long time about the victims and about the problems. We have got to look at what the solutions are and to organise around those solutions. And if you look at the global picture that I painted, it's actually not the same everywhere. There's plenty of countries where this isn't the case, and there's not this such high level of insecure work. And that's because the governments haven't deregulated their labour markets. They've resisted that push by those companies to do so. And what I think is the hard thing, the very hard thing, is really what was described at the New South Wales Teachers Federation. Look at how much they've fought to have secure work for TAFE teachers. And every move they made, well, the bosses found some other move, didn't they? And then the government found another move, and then it was like loopholes all the time that they were trying to find. We saw under the previous coalition government the loophole of contractors, these ABN numbers got used to such a degree, and then the Labor government came in and closed it by introducing sham contractor legislation. Employers are going to keep doing this industry by industry by industry. We can't fight this industry by industry. Like, you can fight it, but in the end, the best way of us doing something about this is to close the loopholes and to make sure there's rights for all workers, no matter who they are. And so get rid of, I think, this idea of categories of workers, like, oh, you're a contractor, or you're labour hire, or you're casual, or you're part-time. You're a worker. That's what you are. You're a worker. So why shouldn't it be that all workers have rights to sick leave? All workers have rights to maternity and parental leave, to all other forms, to annual leave as well. You could have just a basic threshold of once you have regular work, and there's already good definitions about that, then we just make it compulsory that those types of leave have to be paid. On top of that, unfair dismissal rights for people as well, regardless of that, and then properly define, temporary work and limit it to what it used to be for usually parental leave. That's usually what it was for. If you brought in such a system and you had those leave rights and unfair dismissal rights, basically takes away all the incentives that employers had to try and get around what current laws are, or the reason why they make people casual, the reason why they want labour hire rather than full-time. If they know there's actually no difference for them, well then I think you probably find that they're more likely, there's those incentives in there to offer permanent work because they want the loyalty. They don't want people just moving from one place to another. So I might finish by just saying that on the issue of union membership, which was touched on, this is actually one of the main reasons for the decline in union membership in Australia. There's three main reasons for that. And it's not because workers have all of a sudden changed and said, oh, we don't support unions anymore. In fact, all surveys done around people's support for unions shows that it's very high and it's not declined. It's actually gone up since the 1970s, since the time of the height of union membership. The reason is threefold. Number one, it's the loss of highly unionised industries through offshoring and some technological change, but really offshoring through globalisation. Manufacturing industry, for example. And it took 50 years, 80 years to organise that industry. It was organised and then, of course, it was sent overseas. So large parts of the restructuring of the economy. That's actually the biggest reason. The second biggest reason is casualisation and insecure work. And so we all know, those of us who are union delegates or union activists, how hard it is to organise casuals because of the way we've organised people is around the workplace. And if you're not set in that workplace, it makes it a lot harder. So perhaps unions do need to think about how we offer union membership in that term, but in that way. But it's been also a major reason why that's led to union membership going down. The second one is institutional supports that were taken away. But those are really the two. So do not... No, this isn't just about, it's not just about increasing profits for those companies that have pursued this agenda elsewhere. It's also because a means to try and stop us organising as well, by having us as atomised in the workforce, competing against each other in a situation where we're more concerned about not losing our job and keeping our job rather than progressing conditions. So I think it's really important us as a whole trade union movement pursue an agenda of bringing back those rights for all workers regardless of who they are.